Hey, listeners. Today's episode is brought to you by Kind Bar. Kind is deeply committed to crafting food with real, recognizable ingredients, a disruptive notion that sparked the creation of a new, healthy snacking category. Kind is unapologetic in their efforts to challenge the status quo, to shift the food industry, and empower the community and our listeners to make better, more informed choices about their health. Kindness can be a transformative force for good, and that is why we are teaming up with Kind to bring our listeners 10% off or 15% off for military, teachers, students, first responders, doctors, and nurses. Go to podgo.co/kind. That's podgo.co/kind. Kind Bar, creating a kinder and healthier world, one act, one snack at a time. Welcome back, Inebri-arts. This is Andy, the Inebri-art podcast, and I'm not going to mention that I'm recording at my house anymore because I feel like Zoom is a thing that you're all familiar with, and you all know why I'm zooming, so I think this might be the last time I even mention it. And we have an actress with us today, Lisa Durupt. Huh?
Yeah.
You got it right? Yeah, nice.
Yep.
Has joined us, and welcome to the show.
Well, thank you for having me.
No problem. So you said you were kind of like listening into the show ahead of time, so we appreciate the listen. But
Totally.
So how did you get even started in acting? Like what made you want to become an actress?
I didn't want to become an actor. I wanted to.
Oh, okay. Well,
athletic...
thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks
We'll talk to you next time.
That was the shortest interview ever. I wanted to be an athletic therapist. I was supposed to go away for school to play hockey in Minnesota, and I kept dislocating my shoulder my grade 12 year. And once you do any kind of dislocation, it tends to happen often just by way of human anatomy. So I did it in August, December, and then March. And in January, I went to Canada Games for hockey, which was great, but I didn't have a great camp or a great tournament because I was coming off an injury. So to think about going to school in September, specifically for that was a little bit daunting. And my mom just said, why don't you go to university? I was living in Winnipeg. That's where I'm from, which is like straight up from Minneapolis in center of Canada. And my mom said, why don't you go to school there? They just started a women's hockey team. You can play with them for the year, get your shoulder fixed, and then go next year. And I said, sure. And I took what I thought would be easy classes. And one of them was a theater course, just as I think it's an arts and considered an arts or humanity. And I just fell in love. One of our first projects we had to do was just go do a review on Chorus Line. And I think because I grew up very athletic, I played everything and anything I can get my hands on. It was just a complete shift from what I was used to. And within about 2 weeks, I stopped. I shouldn't say I stopped. I slowly gave up the idea of hockey, and I started doing 9 hours of dance a week, 2 hours of singing a week. I enrolled full-time in the theater program. And then just a series of events, right place, right time, where a couple things happened. I drove my girlfriend to a open kind of call for an MTV movie called Everybody's Doing It, and just thought I was driving her, got asked to audition, went back the next day and booked a part in it. And it was my first ever thing. And again, it was just kind of cool. And 16 days on set. This must always be this easy. And then I went to a stage combat class in my third year where the gentleman who was the teacher for that also happened to be the stunt coordinator for all of Manitoba film, because film in Manitoba was just picking up. And so he just got a hold of me after the class and said, why didn't you give me your resume? And I was clueless. I was like, what are you talking about? And because I was coming from sports, but now getting into more of the arts and dance and did well in the class, he just ended up talking to me about stunts. And next thing I know, I was doing stunt work for film. And then as things go, I got into musical theater. I went to a school out in Victoria, Canada for a year for that, went back to finish my degree, and then found out there was a comedy series called called Less Than Kind, and the showrunner was Mark McKinney, who, if you're a Kids in the Hall fan, or if you watch Superstore, he's on that now. Yeah, he was our showrunner. They did a kind of an open checking who's in Winnipeg kind of thing, and I booked a job, and it was a 4-year series, and that led to an agent from Vancouver calling me at home in little Winnipeg going, hey, we saw some footage and heard you don't have an agent, because I was playing the girlfriend of their client, and they asked me to move to Vancouver, and that was 13 years ago now. And then that's kind of just how it happened. Very random.
I'm going to derail this a little bit and ask you a very weird question, but I'm kind of having a bit of deja vu.
Sure.
Do you know a Steph Johnson?
I in Winnipeg?
Yeah.
Like, who specifically? How would I know her?
From hockey.
Oh, God.
From Gimli. Does that sound like a familiar?
I know where Gimli is. How
So,
old would Steph Johnson be?
I don't know, but I literally I had two.
Fill me in.
Okay,
for
so
the
I had
details.
two. I'm just kind of like flabbergasted right now because I'm in such deja vu. So I had two interviews scheduled today. Came from completely different PR people. You're an actress. She's a musician.
Okay.
Literally almost started the exact same way. She's
Steph Johnson.
Steph Johnson. Her band is Mise en Scene.
I'm checking my Facebook to see if we're friends.
She's like, oh, I'm from this little town outside of Winnipeg called Gimli, and when I was a kid, I used to play hockey, and it was just it was like almost exactly what you were talking about, the same thing, minus the injury, and I'm like, that would just be the weirdest thing ever.
Coincidence? Now, it all depends how old she is. I'm looking up Facebook.
I don't know, because that's a very rude question to ask during an interview.
Oh, I don't know. We'll put it out to her. So did you meet with her, or you did already?
No, I already did. Like that. Yeah, I just wrapped that up on our. So it's her band name is Mise en Scene. Mise.
Mise en Scene. Oh yeah.
Scene.
I don't remember Steph Johnson, but that could be that we're not the same age. It could be that she's younger than me, which I would suspect is probably the case. But I don't know. I'm going to ask around because it's not that big of a community.
Yeah, I'm gonna.
Because I'm 39, so I would have graduated in 99. So she might be younger than me.
I think
that's probably.
I feel like she's probably in her 30s. Yeah, because she.
Yeah, so we're.
I'm trying to think. She made a reference to something because we were talking music, and I'm like, oh, we seem to have the same music references. So I was wondering if we're the same age. And then she made a reference about something like from high school, a TV show. I can't remember what it was now off the top of my head, but I'm like, all right, so she's a little younger. Yeah, then you're trying to
place them.
Yeah. I'm like, she's a little younger than me, but. So I'm sorry to totally it was just too weird.
No, that's fantastic.
Yeah. So what? I'll ask you the same. I'll ask you the same question.
The community of hockey players in Manitoba wouldn't be that large. Like, it probably just we didn't line up for years, but it would probably be like we know people through people kind of thing. Right. It's a very small community.
What position did you play?
I was, depending on which team. Provincial team, I would have been a winger. Yeah. Regular club team, I would have been center. I was really fast. I wasn't like a mega goal scorer or anything, but I was ridiculously fast. Yeah. Just my dad was always a great hockey player and skater, and I just inherited his ability. Like I skated before I even walked. I swear to God, like it's natural to me.
I feel like that's a Canadian thing. Like you're born on skates.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. Exactly. Pretty much.
So I'm sorry. Let's just come. I'm just.
Okay.
It was such a weird
Your
thing.
Mind is still blown.
It wasn't that you were both female hockey players. You're both female hockey players from the same area. It was just very, very strange.
It's trippy because Gimli's only like an hour and a half away from Winnipeg. So I assure you that if I could find her on Facebook, which right now I can't, but I mean she could have a different name on Facebook.
Right. Yeah.
Guaranteed, it'll be like you know this many people in common. So probably it's not a shot in the dark. You probably know each other somehow.
So you end up in Vancouver.
Yeah.
And so you took a screen combat class?
Stage combat. Like you fake fighting, sword fighting, all that kind of stuff. Yeah.
So were you looking to kind of get into like the action adventure type of movies or was it just like something to put in your belt?
Well, you go to university, you have to take so many credits in each kind of category to fill your degree. And it looked fun. I was like, that's something I can take to qualify for a degree. Yes, please. So and being a very athletic kid, it just seemed fun. That was it. It was a half-year course. It was really simple. It fit the time slot I needed. There was no real thought behind it other than, well, that looks cool. And so I think that's why I didn't realize at the time how many people took the class to kind of get closer to the stunt coordinator. I was oblivious to that part because I wasn't coming from a place where when I was younger, I was like, oh, I'm going to be an actor, this and that. Like it was just a complete left turn that I thought, well, this would be fun. And I also was really at that point, that was my third year university. So I was really focused on musical theater because by then I was starting to book jobs and for theater and musical theater. And so that was more the focus. And it probably, I'm thinking way back here, but it probably was just something that somebody at some point went, it'd be good to have for when you're on a theater show, whatever.
Right.
So I didn't really overthink it, but.
Do you prefer theater to film and TV or? The other way around.
I think you do theater and even musical theater, like you do it when you have the time and you can because it absolutely feeds your soul. But film is just one of those things that it automatically helps you pay your bill.
Oh, sure, yeah.
So I love it. Don't get me wrong, but I mean, there's just something so cool about doing even like a fringe festival where you've got a house of maybe 150 people and you're all now COVID, you couldn't, but
Right.
everybody's crammed in there and they're literally 2 feet from you in the front row, all the way around you if you're doing it in the round or something,
Hmm.
that you just can't ever hit stop, right? Like it's just figure it out. So I like that interaction. I like that pressure that comes with it. And it's just a different medium and it's a lot of fun. And I think you really figure out quickly who's good at it and maybe who got in there because somebody else thought they were cute. It
Yeah.
doesn't work like that in theater. Like you can't really fake it. Film, you can kind of be like, oh, your cousin's the director. I get it.
So it's easier to
Theater
kind
doesn't
of
work.
like edit
Yeah.
around a bad performance.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's it, right? Like I think you can hide a little bit more in film sometimes, depending on the part. I mean, not to insult anybody, but yeah, I love theater. I like the pressure of not being able to stop. Like you have to figure it out because if you've done professional theater or musical theater, you've had those moments where somebody's missed a cue or the band started playing the wrong something something. And I
Yeah.
remember waiting on stage. We did this show called Jitters, which is basically like Noises Off, but by a
Oh, such a good.
Canadian,
I love that.
right?
Yeah.
Such a good show.
Hmm.
And so it was written around the same time, but it was written by David French, who was a Canadian playwright. And so it didn't get as big of, it didn't, not as many people know about it, but it's the same kind of concept. It's hilarious. It's a show falling apart within a show. And so I played the stage manager who inevitably is sleeping with the lead dude while he's playing a show with his ex-wife. And so we're waiting for the stage manager to come on and it feels like an eternity because the guy missed his cue. So you're hanging out there, and after about 5-10 seconds, your brain starts to try to think of ways to keep the show going. And
Yeah.
then about 20 seconds in, and the audience is starting to sort of pick up, this guy who's 6'4" maybe comes flying through the door, crashes through the door, and all but almost knocks over the set. And he was so quick and funny. He was able to throw
Yeah.
out a line that like explained it all. But oh man, there's nothing like sweating buckets inside going, holy shit, this is only the second act and we still have a third one to do. Like, what are we going to do? But yeah, I don't know. I just like that. I think it's a good challenge.
I mean, that's so ironic because there's like that, literally that scene in Noises Off where I can't remember
Yeah.
who it is, but someone misses their cue and then they end up with three of the same
Yeah.
actor on stage. And
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's it. And the shows are so close, but Noises Off went way further with the physical comedy. And to the point where you're like, were these guys roommates? Did one of them just get to the producers first? Like,
Yeah.
what happened? But yeah, no, it's a great show, but it's exactly like that.
Yeah. Do you prefer to do comedic acting or are you more
Uh,
like a drama kind of person?
Good question. I grew up in a really, really funny household. Like while other kids were watching cartoons or not even cartoons, like Friday night when you're watching like family movie night, my dad was letting me watch like Robin Williams stand-ups. So
Oh,
I
yeah.
definitely like amazing.
Yeah.
So stuff or Richard Pryor or people I should not have been watching. I think I watched. There was this one series of comedy videos that was Whoopi Goldberg, Billy Crystal, and Robin Williams. That every year they did.
Oh, it was
Comic Relief.
Comic Relief.
Comic
Yeah.
Relief.
Yeah. Mhm.
I watched it so much that I broke the tape, which was so not appropriate for my age. But
Yeah.
for some reason, I wasn't allowed to watch Dirty Dancing because it was too sexual. But my parents were okay with me watching, things like that, or Gallagher who used to smash the
Oh, yeah. I actually saw
watermelons.
him perform down here.
Amazing, or the
Yeah.
ball and chain because they had a baby. Like
Yeah.
so. I think I gravitate more to that stuff because my family's all very witty and we were always very playful. I remember having a food fight with my dad at the table, and rather than get upset, my mom just left the room because she didn't want to be involved. And so at one point, and I was already older at this point, like we were like 17, 16, 17. My dad, we ran outside and I went to grab the hose, but he was able to get it out of my hands and I realized I was in trouble. And I went running back in the house thinking I was safe, but he was not ending it. He came flying in and all I could do at the last minute was open the fridge so the water went And so because my family was that family, I think I just gravitate to the funny stuff because I like it. And I think comedy for people who do it well, it's like music. It has a rhythm to it. And some people hear it and some people don't. And I think because I was very fortunate to be blessed with that ear that really does hear those beats and gets it, any chance I get to comedy, I will jump at it. But I also was told years ago from a director, you can't be a good comedic actor if you're not a good actor. So you have to keep up with the other stuff too. Otherwise, it can turn into schmackty, like, hey, waka waka real fast.
Yeah.
So I think it's a balance.
Don't throw shade at Fozzie.
No. Sorry, Foz. But yeah, I think you have to do both because it really does balance you out. But my heart will always, like, anytime you give me comedy, I will say yes, please to that, regardless of what it is.
And, I've heard so many times people say that comedy's harder than drama. And, like, you look at Robin Williams, who you brought up, unbelievably funny, but, like, so much a phenomenal actor in general. And I feel like, Michael Keaton was the same way. He started off kind of, like, in comedies and then became, like, a really good actor. I'm sorry. He didn't become a good actor. He was a good actor.
No, I get what you're saying, though.
Yeah, and it's.
I think it's a different. It's because it really is about rhythm and pacing, and I mean, people train their butts off to even just learn. I remember going to a workshop in LA, and the guy was specifically teaching for live camera sitcom, right?
Yeah.
Live audience. And there was a rhythm and pacing to that. And like I said, like, some people don't hear it, they don't get it. And so, they'll try to they almost like try to show you that the joke's funny. They don't let you as the audience come to it.
Right.
And the funniest people are people that are just dead serious. I mean, that's why you look at some of the characters that we love, even look at any of the cast of Friends. Why are they so funny? Because Ross is ridiculously, sincerely obsessed with always being right. And Monica's over the top neurotic, but it's all really grounded in truth.
Mm-hmm.
And you can't do that unless you're a good actor. You just can't. And we don't believe you. So yeah, it's a tricky beast, but
I love hearing how it kind of came from your family. And I feel like that's part of being funny is you almost can't take yourself seriously, but it's kind of part of that is living in an environment where it's fine. Like it's fine to try and make someone laugh. And
yeah, it was cultivated for sure. And my dad was one of those guys. My dad's actually it's interesting. He kind of looks like Robin Williams, except for my dad is in Canada. We call it Indigenous. I'm not sure, Native American. Yeah. So he's Métis. So he's half Indigenous, and then his dad was French Canadian. But he looks like Robin Williams, but darker skinned, darker hair. It's really trippy. It's like if you just took a shade thing and like made him darker. It's like Robin Williams, but
like
darker.
Through some sort of like Instagram filter.
Yeah, it's trippy. Yeah. It's like, wait, weird. So so my dad was always the guy at parties that, they didn't want him to leave because he was always telling the jokes, tell the jokes. So he kind of missed his calling. He should have been a stand-up comedian. So I think we just came by it naturally, him just being the best joke teller and like a bank of jokes. You're like, how do you possibly, people ask me to tell a joke. I'm like, I don't remember. He'll have like 30 for you like that, which is nuts. So it's definitely cultivated in our house.
I'm on the other side of that. I have 2 kids, and ever since they hit their
life's not funny anymore.
No. I didn't mean it that way. But like ever since they hit their teen years, like they started like cracking jokes and like
trying it out.
And they're so friggin' good, man. Like I remember my daughter got me one day, and it wasn't like it's never set up punchline. It's like someone will say something and they'll come up with a quip or something. They just be like, that is the funniest thing I've ever heard in my life,
Yeah, well, it's the little one-liners. And I think going back to the comedy thing, that's why those people are so darn good, is they have to write their own stuff. Like the stand-up comedian people or the sketch comedy people, like they have to make it up. They have to be so smart. And the smartest, again, when we're going to talk about Robin Williams all the time, but the smartest stand-up comedians are the ones that are so wicked smart because they're up on everything, right? Like they know what's going on. And so it's always funnier when it's something, it's like the Seinfeld, like anything that we can relate to, it's always going to be funnier.
Yeah.
So it's a whole skill that I just go, you guys are amazing. It terrifies me.
So you never thought about doing stand-up?
People ask me that a lot. I think it's one of those things that before I die, it's going to have to be on the bucket list. But I'm great with taking other people's material. I'm great with bantering off of people. But when it comes to, if someone sits down and goes, tell me a joke, make me laugh, like I just sweat buckets. Like,
Yeah.
ooh, I don't know. I'd have to definitely get someone to help me, but we'll see. Never say never. I've learned that every time I say, no, it happens like the next year. So to be continued.
It's so weird because like I have no problem talking with people. It's kind of what I do, and I did like a stand up workshop just for shits and giggles. And the second I got up on stage, I was just like, and it's like my brain shut off. Like I'm like, I should be able to do this.
Yeah, it should be easy, but it's not.
Yeah,
agreed. Yeah, I know. Oof. Makes me scared even just thinking about it. I'm like, do this. And knowing my luck, it's going to be like some ex-boyfriend and his hot new wife sitting in the front row, and I'm just going to be like, I can't even be here right now. Excuse me.
Oh, that'd be terrible.
I mean, like think of all the hecklers. And I remember watching this video with Amy Schumer just destroy a heckler, but in the slowest, nicest way possible. But by the end, she just annihilated him, and I was like, that's a whole other skill that I don't think I have. Like, I would be that girl that just like, get me off the stage.
Have you ever heard of Steve Hofstetter?
No, who's that?
So he's a stand-up, obviously, but he has kind of made a name for himself by destroying hecklers, not intentionally, but he started putting them up on YouTube, like the little clips of him.
I'm making a note. I love that kind of stuff.
And Hofstetter, H-O-F. Stetter? I don't know. But Hofstetter, I think.
Oh, cool. Okay, got it. No saved. Thank you.
So, yeah, his he'll just constantly. He doesn't even like give them a chance. He just the second they pipe up, he's all over them. But
right.
He also, this is not based on hecklers, but he does a bit about being in an airport. And this woman who has a dog that's shitting on the floor, and it was literally one of the funniest things I think I've ever heard. It was so good.
I'm gonna look at it.
Yeah, definitely check that out. So our listeners want us to hear each other recommend cool. YouTube things. So acting.
Oh, that yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
So what would you consider your big break? Like, what was the moment where you're like, oh crap, I'm actually doing this as a job?
As a real thing, probably when I booked the series with Mark McKinney, Kids in the Hall, because I was such a geek for Kids in the Hall, and I'd seen him as he was a cheerleader at one point on SNL, and like I knew who he was. He was a real tangible, successful, air quotes, successful actor, and he was sitting in a room across from me for a callback, and basically you're trying to make him laugh, and I was like, whoa, and it went well, and I walked out going, I don't care if I book it or not. Like, I just made Mark McKinney laugh. I'm good. Like, I was done. I was happy.
Were you starstruck or?
It was more, I wasn't starstruck in the room. I think because you're nervous. It was my real first big callback.
Yeah.
And I was in rehearsals for the musical Hair that day. And so I was going to skip my callback because I wasn't like a big actor in LA or anything. I was this little actor in Winnipeg, and I didn't want to piss off my theater teacher or my theater, the director. And this guy who was a good friend of mine was like, what's wrong? Because he could tell I was kind of nervous all day. He's like, what's wrong with you? I said, I'm supposed to have this callback like an hour, and I don't know how I'm going to get away from this. We're supposed to be working on a number I'm in. And he just said, Lisa, you need to go. Like, you can't. This is ridiculous. So when he got there, all I could think of was just like, do it, get out, and get back to rehearsal. So the whole moment of me seeing him and it going well, it all happened so fast. And my character was really, really crazy. Like, she just was bananas. And so I brought in a Nerf gun because I knew the reader and I'd warned her, but I brought in a Nerf gun and like shot her at one point, which just made him lose it. And so I knew it was like a good thing. And then when I walked out and it all kind of hit me what happened, I was like, oh, that was so cool. Like, you know what I mean? Like, A, to do something you're not supposed to do, whatever. And then, so then I just raced back to the theater thing and didn't even think about it for a while. So I didn't really feel starstruck, so to speak, until the first table read. But then the pressure came with like, oh God, I better be able to do this. Like,
now I got to make them laugh again.
I got exactly. So no, I think, I don't know. Yeah, that's a crazy question. That's so long ago, but yeah, I guess it didn't really hit me till the first table read. then it all sunk in. And I was like, a little white knuckling, like, please don't fire me.
Do you still have to kind of juggle that rehearsal and audition type of thing? Is that still an issue, or is it more?
Yeah, I don't think it ever really goes away. I think there's definitely a certain percentage of actors that they just get handed stuff left, right, and center. But I think people would be surprised that 98% of the acting population still has to hustle for it.
Mm-hmm.
I remember working with Topher Grace a couple of years ago, and we were playing husband wife, and we decided we're going to go grab a bite to eat for lunch. And he's like, but I can't do it today because I have to tape an audition. And I kind of was startled. I was like, but you're Topher Grace. Like, don't people just give you things? He goes,
don't they just watch the 70s show? And
yeah, he goes, no, I have to work twice as hard because they're like, oh, you're that guy from the 70s show. So, and he told me this fantastic story about how he wanted to be in this movie that Brad Pitt was doing, and he referred to him as like Brad because they're buds. And
oh yeah, because they were in Ocean's 11 together.
Exactly. He's known him for years. And so I was like, what do you mean he just didn't like let you audition for it? He goes, well, no, he just figured I wasn't the right person. So I think Topher said he went in, he taped twice or something crazy like that. And then finally was allowed to go in and ended up getting it. It was some war movie that they did together. I'm going to mess up the name. It wasn't Fury or Furry, whatever it was called. Fury. It was a different one. But it's a movie they did together. He ended up winning the part, but he worked his butt off to even get them to think of him for it. Was it
a Netflix one?
It was a while ago. This would have been like 4 years ago. You'd have to look up Topher and then just kind of. It's a war. It's a war movie.
Only if there was some sort of movie database you could go online and look at.
Oh, it's so weird. I know. Internet something. I don't know.
You know.
Internet's overrated.
Yeah. So, it's just a fad.
But anyways, the reason he couldn't go for lunch that day was he was explaining to me that he was trying to get this director to consider him for this part, and this director was not having it. So we were in Winnipeg filming. We just happened to be filming in Winnipeg. We're in Winnipeg filming, and he had gotten it's in Winnipeg, there's not really like a lot of options to tape things unless you can get a hold of like a local actor who has all the setup. So he had gotten a hold through production of some guy who had the stuff, who was coming to his hotel room to put this character on tape, and he was like working his butt off all day. So even the people that you think are getting offered stuff, it just doesn't necessarily work that way. So yes, back to your original question, a really long route, is that you're always trying to juggle and schedule. And then I had a kid a couple years ago, so now you add that into the mix.
Congrats.
And well, thank you. She's awesome. And yeah, you and just stuff that you've got going on in life. Like I can't even tell you how many times to this day I've had multiple wardrobes in the back of my trunk, and you're changing the middle of the street because you had one audition this morning, you're going to another one. It's a rat race that never stops, like ever. But it's weird.
It's funny, like a year ago, if you looked at my calendar, and people that I worked with in my day job were like, we don't know how you do it.
Yeah.
You maybe have 8 hours in between what you're doing at night and what you're doing in the daytime.
Yeah, totally.
But I want it back. Like the second it was gone, I'm like, I don't like this sitting around. Do you?
Yeah.
Are you okay with the rat race? Or are you kind of like, I'd like to?
I live for it, and I get very bored if I'm not busy, which is why a couple years ago I opened my own film training studio just outside of Vancouver where I live, because I had time on my hands. Even if you're working a ton, you still have lots of time on your hands. So just before my daughter was born, I opened up Tri-Cities Film Studio, and then it's been fantastic, and it's so busy. But now that's another added layer to it. It's kind of going, okay, well, we run classes on the weekend. We have a taping studio that runs all week. We have employees. We have all this stuff going on. Plus, you're still, a new mom, and my husband works in production. But we know when we do get that time to just kind of sit down together, even if we try to not talk about business, you end up, one of you will spit something out about like, oh, I read this script. Oh, we should contact so-and-so. Oh,
did you email that person? That kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. He's like, did you talk to so-and-so about that thing about talking to the network? Blah, blah. I'm like, oh God. Yeah, you're right. Let's make a list. So I think creative people, you get energized by being busy. At least I find, because it can go the other way real quick, which is why in quarantine, it was great. I loved the not doing anything for about 5 weeks, and then that was it. I was maxed. And so I was happy when the world slowly started to reopen up here, and that now that filming is back up and running and stuff with guidelines. And yeah, I don't know. I think creative people, you get cranky if you're not doing something because you're just burning to do something.
Yeah, I get depressed and
Right?
like fall into one of these like you go from sleeping 6 hours a day if you're lucky and feeling
Yeah.
perfectly okay to sleeping like 12 hours a day and feeling tired. I'm
Yeah.
like, how does that even work?
I know. And then social media feels like it's everyone else's highlight reel. You're like,
Yeah.
why isn't my highlight reel busy?
Yeah, why are you in Tahiti? Like, how does that?
Yeah, calm down, Daru.
Yeah.
Yeah, I hear you.
So you opened up a film studio.
Yeah, training studio.
A training studio.
Yeah.
Is that kind of like a wanting to give back to those coming, behind you, or did it just seem like a good business idea? Or?
Well, a couple things is that the advice. Actually, I did a commercial years ago with MC Hammer of all people, and we got talking.
Oh, that's a weird one.
I know, right? I'm going somewhere with this. Trust me. So I did this commercial with him for like 3M hooks. I've only ever done 2 commercials my whole life, and this is one of them. And it was very serendipitous. We got talking, and he was talking. He's very business smart, which I thought was funny because the guy's gone bankrupt before and stuff. But because of that,
he's business really smart. Cool.
Yeah, he's wicked smart. Now, so he has, I think he was opening his like 15th business. Because I asked him, like, why you do commercials? He's like, because I'm not relevant anymore. Like, people your age remember me or older, but the young kids don't know me. So he was basically trying to get back in the public eye so that this next business he was opening, he was more relevant. Which I thought was so smart. So we got to talk about business. And he said to me at the time, he's like, how old are you? And I said 30, I think it was 34, 35. He's like, by the time you're 40, you need to be hiring people. People can't be coming to you to hire you. Like they can, but you got to be in some position that you're hiring people. And I was like, okay. And he just kind of gave me this really cool talk about being an entrepreneur and that one of your businesses is acting, but there's still a lot of free time in your life for other businesses, whatever they may be. And so I got thinking about it. And then when we were thinking about having a kid, I thought, well, what can I do? Because when you get pregnant, producers don't really want to hire you. And I ended up having a horrible experience with a producer locally that flipped out when they found out, even though the executive producers knew. It was very silly. But I thought this just amplifies the need to be in control of some form of your business. And so it all kind of came together. And then because I live about 30 minutes outside of Vancouver, there's not really anything out here. And there was a niche that needed to be filled because the Vancouver film industry is the second, it kind of fluctuates between second and third biggest film hub in North America between LA, Atlanta, and New York. So it kind of just took off, which has been fantastic. And I do love it. My mom's a teacher. I've always taught either or coached like little kids hockey or musical theater or something. So I really do come by it honestly. I just took a long time to get into it because I felt like I didn't want to try and oversell or I don't know. You see a lot of people teach that maybe are doing it for the wrong reasons, and I didn't want to be those people. So yeah, I can't be here as much as I would like to be, but it's definitely, I think back to your question, I think it does give back to people because they get to train with people who are in the industry and are, they're not just kind of making it up. They know what they're talking about, which is great.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty cool. Like, I don't think I'm sure there's something like that around here. I've never actually actively looked for something. But,
where are you based?
Plymouth, Massachusetts.
Amazing. Okay. Yeah. Well, hey, Massachusetts.
About 4 blocks from the Mayflower.
Love it. I love it. Now, you don't have like a heavy Boston type accent. Is that just strictly Boston, or is that doesn't kind of percolate the rest of the state? Or
so the strange thing, the Boston accent is very much in Boston. Okay, and I feel like predominantly Southie.
Okay.
Once you get to other parts of Massachusetts, there are some other accents. Like there's a town called Fall River, which is like right on the Rhode Island border, and that has an accent that's reminiscent of New York, which is bizarre. Okay. But mine comes out when I'm drinking.
Interesting.
I've had a few drinks, then I can really drop my R's pretty heavy.
That's when I get very Winnipeg Canadian, because Winnipeg is just above Fargo. Mm-hmm. So, and then I'll go home at Christmas and stuff, and my mom, so happy to see you. You're like, oh God, Mom.
Sorry.
Like, you sound so LA. Yeah, my mom will be like, you sound so LA. I'm like, no, Mom. Everyone from here just sounds like they're very Canadian. Like we're like Canadian light on the West Coast, but you guys are Canadian.
Have you had to actively work on your accent to kind of
Oh
lose
yeah.
it?
Oh yeah, because it's instinctual, like and I'm sure there's things that even now I'm saying that your U.S. viewers are like, "Whoa, she's Canadian," but yeah, especially in an audition, you'll go through your script and or even show audition, whatever. You go through your script and make sure that you're not saying, because even simple things like, do you guys say garage or garage? How do you word
Garage.
that?
Garage.
What do you say? Garage? Do we say
Garage.
garage? Yeah, we word it differently than you. Um, the big ones we get nailed on out here are out and about. They'll be like
Hmm.
out, about, like it's very proper. So yeah, even so, it's so. So yeah, I definitely have to be careful with it, and I'll catch myself. Or directors will be like, "Say it again."
I remember a buddy of mine was living out in Chicago, and he started dating this girl, and he was home visiting, and she come with him, and we're sitting around my kitchen table and we're talking, and I was like, "Oh yeah, it's over," and I think it's a New England thing. We give everybody nicknames.
Oh, okay.
So I'm like, "Oh, we were over Buka's playing polka and blah blah blah," and his girlfriend has this weird look, and I'm like, "What?" She's like, "Polka, like polka music?" I'm like, "No, poker, poker. We were playing cards."
Hilarious. Yeah, I was trying to figure out.
Yeah,
I was like, "Do you guys play polka?"
yeah.
Yeah, I was with her. I was like, "Okay, cool."
But
Whatever
like we're
y'all want.
having drinks sitting around, and so like
Yeah,
immediately I start dropping, the R's
yeah.
off my words because that's what we
Oh,
do.
cool. Yeah.
Um,
Okay. Makes more sense.
but I always find it weird because like the traditional Boston actors, Matt Damon, Ben
Yeah.
Affleck,
Exactly. Everyone goes to them right away. You're
when
like,
they
get it.
try to do like when they try to bring back their Boston accent, it's not right. Like around here, people like will be like, "Oh God, it hurts to like hear them do it because it's
Yeah.
not. It's
They've been out of it for too long.
yeah, it's almost like they're almost worse than someone who didn't have it before, if that makes any
Yeah.
sense.
No, totally. Totally.
Yeah,
Because it's not as natural. I get it.
yeah.
Totally.
Except for
It's like me making fun.
Mark Wahlberg.
Oh, that
He
man
he,
can do
he
no
can
wrong.
he can
That man is amazing.
apparently makes hamburgers or something. I don't know.
Wahlburgers. Yeah. His
Yeah,
family has talk about business people. Who would have thought that Marky Mark from A Funky Bunch and, Donnie from New Kids on the Block would be like two of the most successful entrepreneurs in Hollywood at all. Like they're all about wearing their underwear on stage, and you're like, oh, these guys.
yeah. And now
Now
they're
you're like,
huge. I mean, they were huge then, but now they're
yeah,
huger.
no, but now they're like brilliant business gods. So you go, okay, cool, whatever.
Yeah.
I bow down.
Well, that's the same thing. You get your business. So I mean, I don't
Yeah,
know. I
I'm
don't
like
think you could turn it
99.
into a food truck, but
I don't know. I don't know. If I could sit, if I could, they ask you questions like, if you could have a drink with one person, or if you could sit down, I would sit down for an hour and pick the hell out of Mark Wahlberg's brain. Because I just think that guy has turned everything he touches business wise
Mhm.
to gold, So I go, that's who
Oh,
I
I
would
don't know.
sit
Have you seen
down and
Planet of the
pick his brain.
Apes? Oof. Mm.
But yeah, fair. But was he in charge of that, or was he just
Oh no, I don't know.
in
I'm
it?
just, you know.
Wasn't Willa Ford or whatever the singer back in the day in that as well, or something? I don't know. I'm trying to think of who was in the original one with him. Either way, it's
Yeah.
gone, so we'll leave it.
So what are your plans for post COVID? Are you working on
Ooh.
projects? What's going on at your school there, or is it a school
Well,
or a training studio? Is there really a difference, or?
well, I think a school implies like you have some crazy long curriculum. We just hold classes for people
Oh,
to come
okay.
out, and yeah, so it's just helping actors get their foot in the door and book work out in Vancouver, which we've been doing pretty good at. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I think school's a little overrated because we're not, like I said, accredited or anything like that. No, it's just a studio, just help people get into the business. Well, that's been it's back up and running since end of May, beginning of June. Obviously, we have, social distancing and all that stuff in
Yeah.
place, and masks, and now because if you're familiar with this or not, but you used to go into the room for auditions and you can't anymore. You have to tape them. So we have a
Yeah.
taping studio that runs all the time. So that's been nuts. So that never really stopped. But I post COVID, I don't even know. I don't even know what that looks like. Like I did a job of maybe a couple months ago, a month and a half ago, and it was just I think it's a Hallmark. It might be a Lifetime. It's an acquisition, so they hadn't attached it to a network yet. And I have to go back to do an episode of Heartland in a couple weeks. I've been on that show for 3-4 seasons now, just kind of trickled in and out.
Yeah.
But then I don't know. The more I talk about it with my husband, like I'm kind of really enjoying not working right now because my daughter's only 19 months. And she's only going to be little once, and working can consume so much of your time that we actually just had a real big kind of family meeting about it yesterday. And we both just said that unless something really, you can't not do this, maybe just hit pause until the new year, at least till February or March, and just spend time with her, because she's only going to be little once, and being away is hard. Like flying out of town and working is hard. Right now, flying on an airplane in general isn't exactly ideal.
It's got to be anxious ridden. Like, I can't even imagine.
Yeah, so I think right now it's kind of nice because I haven't had time off in so long, like other than when we were forced to for initial COVID,
right,
that I'm genuinely just looking forward to hunkering down, staying at home, and taking about the next 6 months or so to just not think about it.
Especially that age. I mean,
yeah.
I feel like every age for kids, there's something cool, but that age is like, they're doing a lot of things for the first time. And
yeah, and that really hit me when COVID first happened, and my husband is one of these, like, if he could go live in the outdoors, he would, he's that guy. So he said to me, why don't we rent an RV and then we can just like travel? I said, why don't we see if we can rent a cabin? Maybe like one place, because we have a 1-year-old, that might be better. So we found this fantastic place in Osoyoos, which is about, it's lake country, so it's like 5 hours from here.
Yeah.
And it was just this very isolated, but still within reason if something happened and you had to go to hospital, right on the water. And so for 5 weeks, we just kind of hunkered down right in this gorgeous cabin with nobody else around. And it was amazing. But my daughter grew so much. She took her first step. She started to speak. She got her first tooth. Like, all this stuff happened that I went, I'm going to miss so much of this, or I would have missed so much of this if I was working right now. Like, I wouldn't have been there for any of the firsts. And it really hit me. And I went, you know what? I love doing this, but I love her more. And I don't want to have to explain to her later, like, oh, mommy doesn't know what your first word was, or mommy doesn't know because she wasn't there. So I think, it's kind of weird to say it out loud, but that was the decision we made, that I think for the next 6 months or so, we're just going to chill on the acting thing, stay around home, and then get back to it when the world maybe gets back to normal. So
first word's a funny thing. It's like, I remember being like, oh my God, that's so cool. And now I'm like, will you shut up?
What a supportive dad.
Yeah, well, she's as mean to me as I am to her. Like, I mean, that's
I love it.
They have such a good sense of humor. I remember we were playing. One of my favorite things to do with them is play board games.
Oh, cool.
And she kicked my ass at something one day, and I was just like kind of flabbergasted. And I just looked at her and go, you're adopted, right?
I will save that. And steal that. How old is she now?
16.
Oh, she's like a real human now with an attitude.
Yeah. She's 16. She's not. She's very quirky. I mean, I love both my kids. My son just turned 18. My son is very empathetic and sweet, and just has a huge heart, and is just a really, really lovely person. She's quirky and goofy and weird. And I mean that in a very positive way. And is really dry and sarcastic. She is brutal funny. Like, you're like, oh man, you hurt my feelings, and that's super funny at the same time.
Yeah. They can roast you. You're like, God, you're smart. That's terrifying.
I don't know if I've told this on the podcast before, but I've definitely told it to people. She's 16 now. I think she was 10 at the time, or maybe 11. And we're driving in the car, and she was 10 because my son was about 12. And we were talking about my son getting older, and I'm like, oh, someday, buddy, you'll be able to grow a beard of your own.
Yeah.
And she pipes up, and she's like, didn't he tell you? And I'm like, tell me what? She's like, he had a hair growing out of his chin, and Grammy pulled it out. And I go, buddy, don't let her do that. And he's like, why not? And I'm like, because ladies like the facial hair. And without missing a beat, my daughter goes, then why are you so lonely?
What?
And I'm just like, oh, man, that hurts so much, and it's so funny.
So well placed.
Yeah, and there was no thought. It was just instant. I was like, oh, man, I am crushed. That was so good.
Amazing. Wow.
Shit.
She's good. Yeah, she's good. That's like full-on Sarah Silverman styles.
Yeah, I
like.
Very much, yeah.
Okay, awesome.
So, do you... Would you like
But
to see your daughter follow in the acting footsteps, or like maybe
oh
like work at
god.
the studio?
I won't make her work here. No. I don't know. The acting thing, this was a deal I made with my husband because my husband and I met doing musical theater. That guy that made me go to the audition, I
Hmm.
married him. So he's a smart dude. And we just agreed if she comes to us one day and is like, I want to do this thing, cool. But we're not going to be the parents that like put her in it. Because
Yeah.
I think both him and I got to where we are by we were lucky to have parents who let us make those choices. Like they kind of offer up ideas like try gymnastics, try this, try that. But they never ever made us do or pushed us into anything that we didn't want to do. So I think for her, I think she's going to eventually figure out what mom does. I mean, she's too little to know right now. Right now,
Yeah.
she's, you just feed her and make sure she doesn't die. And that's all she cares about.
Right.
But yeah, I think if she wants to, my advice to her would just be make sure that, like everybody, like make sure you have other things that you do that fulfill you, because if you're trying to fulfill yourself from just acting, like being famous, whatever, you're pooched. It's not going to
Yeah.
work out for you. So yeah, so I think if she wants to, I won't say no because it's very hypocritical of me, but I don't know, you kind of don't want her to, but at the same time it can be really fun. So I say if you want to, have at her, go for
It's
it.
so funny because like I talk to lots of different creative people, and this
Yeah.
question kind of comes fairly regularly, and they always kind of have the same like, oh God, I don't want them to go through all the shit that I went through.
Yeah.
But at the same point, we forget it makes us happy. As
Well,
hard as it is.
and I can't name a single artist that didn't get into it because they didn't want to, right? Like
Yeah.
it's any form of art. Like how can you stay in it if you're not totally into it? Because it's not easy. But at the same time, my mom was a school teacher and was like, "Don't ever be a school teacher. Too many
Yeah.
report cards, this and that." And you're like, "Oh, okay." And then I had a hairdresser. I love to do my girlfriend's hair for prom and all that kind of stuff. And she's like, "Don't ever be a hairdresser." I'm like, "Okay, so don't do anything that seems fun. Sounds great." So, I
If
don't
she,
know. Who
so
knows?
if she was like, I don't know, 10 and wanted
Mhm.
to act at 10, would
Yeah.
you be cool with that? Because I feel like kid actors do not have a good track record.
Yeah, I would. My question to her, I guess questions would be A, why? Why do you want to do it? And B, do you understand how much work you're getting into? Because you're not asking to, join a sports team. You're asking to join a business world to be treated like an adult. So why? I think because that's something my parents were really good at, that they would say to me, like, tell me why I should let you do this, or tell me why you think this is a good idea. And you had to really think and explain it. You couldn't just be like, because. So I don't know. She has a good, if she thought it through and it's what she wants to do, then yeah, I think so. I think I also think because I've been in this business, you kind of know the pitfalls and you know what to expect. And you're right. Like the ratio of kid actors who make it past 21, or like the horrifically unmagical number of 27.
27, yeah.
Yeah, right. Like you just go, there's a lot of people that don't succeed. So I would encourage her to also, as much as acting, maybe take an interest in the entire process of filmmaking, because is it the actual acting you like, or is it the idea of making film you like? Because there's a plethora of things you can do, especially if you're artistic and want to get into the graphic side of it or special effects or whatever. So I would demand that she also take an interest in something else in it for at least a little while to try,
Yeah.
learning how to actually make movies or learning that side of it as well. Because then you have more appreciation for it too. Like as an actor, if you don't appreciate the people that are even, setting your props, or the fact that the focus puller's only job is to make sure you're clear and you're being a jerk and you won't land on your mark, like, it's like, I think you have more appreciation when you know what everyone else does and you've done it or had to at least try it. So that would be my trade-off. Yeah.
It's funny. I was talking to a musician, I think it was yesterday or the day before, and she was saying how she also does sound engineering for a venue. And I'm like, oh, does that make you like more demanding when you go to play places? Because you're like, this is how I would do it. And she goes, no, the exact opposite. Because
totally opposite.
I realize what it is like to deal with those divas. And she's like, I think I became less of a diva because of it.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. And I think for me, like my negotiation strategies with even contracts and stuff changed when my husband started working in a production office where he's hearing the other side of it. So things that you think are important, these poor guys are like, we have 75 other things ahead of that. We don't give a crap if you need X, Y, Z or whatever. Right. Like,
Yeah.
I think I just think you have far more appreciation for other people when you understand what they do. So
So now that you have the training studio,
Mhm.
are there other aspects of film and TV making that you want to get your hands into?
Yeah, well, I teamed up a while ago with a production company, but very quickly realized that it wasn't a good fit. There was just too many cooks in the kitchen, and my husband, who was working in production, was like, "Why don't you just start your own?" And I said, "Well, it can't be that easy." He's like, "No, it is, Lisa. Like, you just have to take the first step." And so we talked about it, and sure enough, I called up a bunch of different people, producers, directors, people over the years that I respect and love, and they all just said, "Well, why can't you do it?" I went, "Right." So yeah, we just
There isn't a
incorporated.
club I have to join, or
Yeah,
like
right. There's
a
not a magic
quest.
handshake. I know, no, but it's true. It's such a game of just having connections and knowing the right people and being willing to ask all the right questions or wrong questions and get people who have been through it before to kind of mentor you. That I have learned so much in just even the last few months when this all kind of started happening. Like, we're in the infancy stages, but
Mhm.
we live in the little city that we live in is called Coquitlam, so we called it Coquitlam Pictures. Really straightforward, very boring. Um, but yeah, and already the strides that we've made with getting into producing with again infancy stages with companies like Hallmark and some other indie projects, that it's all very new, but it's amazing when you just kind of put it out there to people. If you have a good work ethic and you haven't burnt bridges, you've been a good person. I was shocked at how many people were willing to be like, "Oh, actually, yeah, and also you should meet this person because they can probably help you. Go for lunch with them," and blah 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 blah. So I definitely long term love the idea of creative producing. You hear people say, "Oh, you should get into directing," and that's not my thing. Like, those people are brilliant who do it, but I like the idea of, and I understand the idea of, if I'm a female, I'm 39. And so as you get older in this business, the more you can bring to the table with being part of the discussions ahead of time and the projects and all of that, you secure work for yourself, but you also then create work for other people who maybe wouldn't have as many opportunities. So yeah, I think that's the path that I love acting. It's all going great, but there's part of me that, as a business person, goes, yeah, I still want more. I still want to learn more and keep learning more. So the next venture is going to be to keep the executive producing, creative producing thing going.
I love that. And I feel like now is the time. There's so many platforms that need and want content.
Oh yeah,
And I was listening to an interview just yesterday with John Leguizamo, and he's talking about how he felt his nationality was underrepresented, so he had to create his own content. And I feel like
yeah.
now is just so much easier to do.
Oh
Um,
yeah, for
the
sure.
the equipment's affordable and approachable, and the platforms. I mean, you can just. I don't think it happens as much as it used to, but you can put something up on YouTube and just from having fun on.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
people will watch it. That's the crazy part. I know it's made it very accessible to everyone, regardless if you're some famous rock star in LA or if you're just somebody who has an idea. Like, we are so able to make things happen, unlike we were even 10 years ago. Even
Yeah.
though YouTube was a thing, it was like, but it was still kind of out of reach. But now, even like, people are filming full movies on their cell phones, and it's just insane what they can do. So
You've
it's
chuckleheads
kind of
in Plymouth
exciting.
with a microphone that's
Yeah.
getting to talk to all
Yeah.
sorts of people. I mean,
Yeah. Well, that's it. Suddenly it's like, jackass isn't such a random thing. Or, like, anyone can do that now.
yeah.
Whereas before it was like, who are these guys and how do they get money?
And now
Now
they're
you're like,
like,
oh,
everyone has one, and how do they get money?
yeah, exactly. Nobody has money to do it, but they
Yeah.
still did have an iPhone. It's okay. Yeah.
Well, Lisa, this has been a lot of fun. I want to say thank you. Where can our listeners go to see what you're working on, find out more about your studio,
Yeah.
what films are
Any
on
of
what
my
platforms, yada, yada, yada?
all the things.
Yeah.
Across the board, my handle for everything is just the Lisa Durupt, but it looks like Durupt, Durupt, the Lisa Durupt, at wherever you want to find me. Instagram, Twitter. I'm not as active on social media as I probably should be, but Instagram is probably the more up to date. And then yeah, when in doubt, just check IMDb. That always has the up to date stuff.
Yeah. And if they want to find out more about your training studio, it's Tri-Cities Film Studio.
TriCitiesFilmstudio.com. Yeah. And
That's
you
awesome.
can find it's linked on my Instagram, so you can find it.
Perfect.
I'm not hard to find.
Yeah.
There's only one other Lisa Drew in the world, and she's in France. So I'm not her.
So, did you know that because you Googled yourself? So I'm assuming.
Well, because I tried to get just Lisa Drew for my handles years ago, and it was like, it's taken. I'm like, who is this woman? But my grandfather, it was a crazy story. He was adopted by the Drews because his parents were a doctor and a nurse who had an affair. Dr. Scott. And then the nurse kind of panicked and like gave him to the Drew family and said she'd be back and never came back. So the Drew name itself is from somewhere over in France, and it's far more popular there, but it's kind of an anomaly in North America. So that's why I was surprised, because if anyone ever says my name correctly, I'm like, oh, my family actually knows you.
Yeah.
Versus Drew, Durupt, Durput, you name it.
Oh, the first time I saw it, I'm like, I'm not even going to try. That's crazy.
Exactly. Yeah. There you
So
go. So
that's a weird.
LisaDrew.com.
That's a weird family history. Have you ever done like the 23andMe to kind of like see?
My sister did it. I can't remember what she said happened, but it was a while ago. Yeah, it's pretty nuts. And then both my parents have crazy stories. My mom's biological father passed away when she was 3. And so the guy who was a family friend through the brother who was living at the house at the time, who had been moved from Holland and had like no money but was working with her brother, he ended up being at the beach with all of them that day, and I saw this all go down. And my mom was like 3 and my uncle was 1. Long story short, years later, he ended up marrying my grandma, and that's who I knew as my grandpa. So they both have these like crazy
That's
stories.
Crazy, yeah.
I know. One day I'll get someone to write them, but wow, they're trippy. There you go.
That's cool. But no, thanks, man. This was like so much fun.
Oh, awesome! Thank you.
I've worked through my day. I've worked through my deja vu. I'm okay now.
Watch. I'm gonna go find her on Facebook officially and be like, I do know her. There you go. That's amazing. Done and done. Cool.
So yeah, anytime you have something coming on or going on that you want to talk about, you're always welcome on the show. This was a lot of fun.
I will take that. This was really easy and a lot of fun. Thank you so much.
Outstanding. And thanks to our listeners for listening. We'll catch you guys again next week. Thanks for listening to today's podcast. You can find us on all social medias at Inebri-art or on Instagram at Inebri-art6. You can email us at Inebri-art@yahoo.com. And make sure you listen to the other podcasts on the Inebri-art Podcast Network, including Bar Talk, Old Colony Cast, Retro Redoctopus, America's Hometown Horror Podcast, and our newest one, Theme Park Legends, a podcast about working at theme parks. What else? And we'll catch you again next time.